Have you ever felt the ground shift beneath you, not from an earthquake, but from words? That's what happened to me, standing in my own kitchen, the heart of our home in California. I'm Helen Castillo, 70 years old, and I thought I knew my family. But that morning, as the coffee machine hissed and the sun sliced through the blinds, my son-in-law, Mark, shattered everything. "You don't contribute," he sneered, his voice low but sharp, like a blade hidden in silk. "You're just a tax write-off with a pension." My chest tightened, the air suddenly too thin. How could he say that, after all I'd given? I wanted to protect my dignity, my daughter's future, but fighting back risked tearing us apart. What would you do when trust shatters? Stay with me to find out. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. If this story's grabbing you, hit that like button to let us know. Tell us where you're tuning in from. The kitchen tiles were cold under my bare feet, grounding me as Mark's words echoed in my skull. I'd only asked why my credit card was locked. Simple, innocent. His smirk, though, was anything but. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, his tailored shirt crisp like he owned the room. "It's nothing, Helen," he said, but his eyes didn't meet mine. They darted to Emily, my daughter, who stood frozen by the sink, her hands gripping a dish towel. She didn't speak, didn't defend me. Her silence stung worse than his words. I remembered signing checks for their mortgage, groceries, even Mark's shiny new car, my pension stretching to keep this house afloat. Those late nights balancing their books flashed in my mind, my fingers cramped from writing, my coffee gone cold. Had it all been for nothing? I forced a smile, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I'll figure it out," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Mark shrugged, already turning away, but I saw it, a flicker of something in his eyes. Guilt? Or calculation? My heart pounded as I retreated to my room, the familiar creak of the stairs matching the rhythm of my thoughts. Something was wrong. I'd trusted Mark, welcomed him like a son. But now, doubt crept in, cold and heavy, settling in my bones. I sat at my desk, the laptop screen's glow harsh against the dim room. My fingers trembled as I logged into the joint account I shared with Emily, the one I'd poured my savings into for their future. The numbers didn't add up. Transactions I hadn't authorized glared back at me. Thousands moved to accounts I didn't recognize. My breath caught, the room shrinking around me. The bitter scent of my untouched coffee lingered, mixing with the musty air of old books on my shelf. Had Mark done this? My mind raced back to his promises, his smooth assurances that he'd handle the finances. I'd believed him, lulled by his charm, by Emily's love for him. But now each click of the mouse felt like peeling back a lie. My hands shook, not from age, but from fury. I wasn't just a pension check. I was Helen Castillo, a woman who'd built a career managing money, who'd raised a daughter alone. They'd forgotten that. Have you ever looked back and wondered why you gave so much, only to feel it wasn't enough? That's where I found myself, alone in my attic room, the sting of Mark's words still raw. The California sun filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the floor, but my mind was elsewhere, lost in years of sacrifice for Emily and, yes, even for Mark. I'd poured my heart into this family, my pension into their dreams, believing it bound us closer. Now, with those unauthorized transactions glaring from my laptop screen, doubt crept in like damp rot. Had I been blind to Mark's true nature all along? My fingers brushed an old photo album, its leather cover cool and dusty, pulling me back to the beginning. Why had I given so much, only to be called a burden? The attic smelled of aged paper and cedar, a quiet sanctuary above the house where Mark's voice couldn't reach. I opened the album, and there was Emily, gap-toothed and grinning, her tiny hand in mine at her first day of school. I'd been a single mother then, 32 and terrified, my husband gone too soon. Late nights blurred together in my memory, me at the kitchen table, balancing budgets after my day job as a financial manager. My eyes burned from the calculator's glow, my hands cramped from scribbling numbers. I'd taken extra shifts, skipped dinners, all to pay for Emily's tuition, her ballet classes, her future. Each check I wrote felt like a promise. I'd give her the life I never had. Years later, when Emily brought Mark home, I saw that same spark in her eyes. Hope, love. He was charming, ambitious, with big talk of business ventures. I trusted him, maybe too quickly. "I'll take care of her, Helen," he'd said, his hand firm on Emily's shoulder, his smile warm. I believed him. I opened the joint account, poured in my savings, even helped fund his startup. The leather scent of my checkbook lingered in my nostrils as I signed over thousands, my signature bold and trusting. "It's for the family," I told myself, ignoring the late-night arguments I overheard, the way Mark's voice sharpened when he thought I wasn't listening. Now, sitting in the attic, I traced Emily's face in the photo, my chest heavy. Had Mark always seen me as a means to an end? I remembered his promises to handle the finances, his casual dismissal when I asked for details. "You don't need to worry, Helen," he'd said, his tone smooth as polished stone. But worry gnawed at me now, a cold weight in my gut. My inner voice whispered, "You taught Emily to trust, but did you teach her to see?" The thought hurt, sharp as a splinter. I'd raised her to be kind, but had I left her vulnerable to someone like Mark? I stood, my knees creaking, and moved to the window. The neighborhood was quiet, palm trees swaying gently, their fronds whispering in the breeze. Below, the house felt different now. Not a home, but a puzzle with pieces I didn't understand. I'd kept a secret, though, one Mark didn't know. Years ago, I'd tucked away over $300,000 in personal investments, a safety net from my career. The memory of setting it up flashed vivid. Me in my old office, the hum of the air conditioner, the click of my pen as I signed the papers. It was my pride, my proof I wasn't just a pension. Did Mark think I was too old to use it? What do you do when the truth you've been avoiding stares you in the face, cold and undeniable? That's where I was, hunched over my laptop in the dim attic, the screen's glow burning my eyes. The unauthorized transactions in our joint account weren't mistakes. They were theft, and Mark's name was all over them. My heart pounded, each beat a mix of rage and betrayal. I'd given him everything, my trust, my money, my daughter's future, and he'd turned me into a pawn. The attic's cedar scent felt suffocating now, the walls closing in as I realized how far his deception went. I wanted to storm downstairs, confront him, but something sharper took hold, a need to expose him, to make him face what he'd done. How could I unravel his lies without losing Emily in the process? I printed the bank statements, the printers hum a low growl in the quiet. The papers felt heavy, their edges sharp against my fingers, each line detailing Mark's greed, thousands siphoned to accounts I didn't know. My mind flashed back to a conversation months ago, Mark's voice smooth as he leaned across the dinner table. "I'm investing for us, Helen," he'd said, his eyes bright with promise. "You'll see big returns." I'd nodded, lulled by his confidence, ignoring the unease in my gut. Now those words felt like poison, each one a lie I'd swallowed whole. The memory stung, my chest tightening as I realized how blind I'd been. I found Mark in the living room, sprawled on the couch, his phone glowing in his hand. The room smelled of his cologne, sharp and expensive, a scent that once seemed harmless, but now turned my stomach. Emily was there too, curled in an armchair, her eyes fixed on a book she wasn't reading. I held up the statements, my voice steady despite the fire inside. "What are these, Mark?" His smirk faltered, just for a second, before he shrugged. "Investments, like I told you," he said, his tone dripping with dismissal. "You wouldn't understand." The words hit like a slap, but I pressed on. "You moved my money without asking. That's theft." His eyes narrowed, and he stood towering over me. "Careful, Helen. You're sounding paranoid." Emily's hands trembled, the book slipping to the floor with a soft thud. Her voice was small, barely a whisper. "Mom, maybe it's a mistake?" But her eyes darted to Mark, pleading, and I saw it. The fear of losing him, the same fear that had kept me silent too long. My heart ached for her, but I couldn't stop. "No mistake," I said, my gaze locked on Mark. "I trusted you." He laughed, a cold, hollow sound that echoed in the room. "Trust? You're living here rent-free, Helen. Be grateful." The air grew thick, the tension like a storm about to break. I wanted to scream, to shake Emily awake, but I held back, my mind racing. Later, alone in my room, I replayed the confrontation, my hands still shaking. Mark's smugness, Emily's silence, they fueled a resolve I hadn't felt in years. I thought of my career, the nights I'd spent outsmarting markets, building a future. Mark thought I was weak, but he'd forgotten who I was. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady as I opened a recording app. The next time he slipped, I'd be ready. A memory surfaced. Mark boasting about his investments over the phone, unaware I was in the next room. His voice, so casual, admitting he was managing my money. I'd catch him again, and he'd have nowhere to hide. I stood by the window, the night air cool against my face, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from the yard. The house was quiet, but it felt like a battlefield, every creak a warning. I'd started this fight, and there was no turning back. My recordings, the statements, they were weapons, but would they be enough? The question gnawed at me, sharp and urgent as the stars blinked above. How will I stop Mark? The plan's just beginning. How do you fight a battle when the enemy lives in your home? That's the question that haunted me as I sat in my attic, the bank statements still scattered across my desk, each one a silent accusation. Mark's smug dismissal in the living room had lit a fire in me, but rage alone wouldn't win this. I needed a plan, something sharp and calculated to expose his theft and protect what was mine. The attic's cedar scent grounded me, the faint hum of the neighborhood outside a reminder that life went on, even as mine felt like it was unraveling. I'd spent years managing money, outsmarting markets. Surely I could outsmart Mark. But could I do it without breaking Emily's heart? The weight of that question pressed against my chest as I reached for my phone to call Sarah, my old friend, and a lawyer with a mind like a steel trap. Sarah's office was a stark contrast to the chaos of my thoughts. Clean lines, polished wood, the air crisp with the scent of fresh ink and leather. She sat across from me, her silver hair catching the light, her eyes sharp as she listened. "He's been moving your money, Helen," I said, sliding the statements across the desk, "without my consent." My voice trembled, not from fear, but from the fury I'd kept bottled up. Sarah's pen scratched against her notepad, her questions precise. "How much? When? Any proof beyond these?" I told her about the recording, Mark's careless admission that he was investing my money. "Good," she said, her smile tight. "We'll freeze your accounts, starting with the one he doesn't know about." Her confidence steadied me, like a hand on my shoulder. I thought back to a decade ago, sitting in my old office, the hum of the air conditioner a constant companion as I set up my personal investments. Over $300,000, tucked away in bonds and stocks, my secret safety net. I'd signed the papers with a steady hand, the pen's weight reassuring, knowing this was my independence. Mark had no idea it existed, and that ignorance was my advantage. The memory fueled me now, a reminder that I wasn't helpless. Sarah's voice pulled me back. "We'll sue for fraud and forgery," she said, her words cutting through the fog of doubt. "But you need more evidence. Keep recording." I nodded, my resolve hardening like concrete. Freezing the account was a bold move, and it felt like a rebellion. At the bank, my fingers danced across the touchscreen, the sterile air sharp in my lungs. Each click locked Mark out, a digital wall he couldn't breach. The teller's voice was calm, professional, but to me it was a battle cry. Yet, as I left, a pang hit me. Emily. She'd been distant since the confrontation, her eyes avoiding mine. I pictured her face, torn between her husband and me, and my heart ached. What if she chooses him? The thought was a cold blade slicing through my courage. I pushed it down, focusing on the plan, but it lingered, a shadow I couldn't shake. Sarah's office became my war room. She uncovered forged signatures on the transfers, her fingers brushing the documents with a quiet intensity. The rustle of paper was a soundtrack to our strategy, each page a piece of Mark's undoing. "These are sloppy," she said, her voice laced with satisfaction. "He underestimated you." I clung to that, but doubt crept in. What if Mark twisted this against me, painted me as the villain to Emily? My mind churned, replaying his smooth lies, his ability to charm. I needed to be smarter, to stay one step ahead. Every recording, every statement was a brick in the case we were building, but would it hold? What does it feel like to face the person who betrayed you, knowing the truth is finally in your hands? That's where I stood, in a California courtroom, the air thick with the scent of polished wood and anticipation. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from the weight of what was coming. Mark sat across the room, his tailored suit pristine, his smirk barely hidden. He thought he'd outsmarted me, an old woman he'd dismissed as a burden. But I had the bank statements, the recordings, and Sarah by my side, her sharp eyes scanning the room like a hawk. This was my moment to unravel his lies, to reclaim what was mine. Yet, as I glanced at Emily in the gallery, her face pale and eyes red, a question lingered. Would this victory heal us or break us apart? The courtroom was a stage, its high ceilings and heavy silence amplifying every sound, the shuffle of papers, the judge's gavel striking like a heartbeat. I took the stand, my hands steady despite the eyes on me. Sarah presented the evidence, bank statements showing Mark's unauthorized transfers, each one a betrayal in black and white. The projector hummed, casting numbers onto the screen, and I felt the room shift. Mark's lawyer objected, his voice sharp, but Sarah countered with the recordings. Mark's own words filled the air, smug and careless. "I'm investing for Helen. She doesn't need to know." The jury leaned forward, and I saw Mark's jaw tighten. His mask was slipping, and I savored it, the bitter taste of his lies now his to choke on. I remembered the night I'd recorded him, my phone hidden in my pocket, as he rambled on the phone in the next room. My hands had trembled then, not from age, but from the dawning truth. I'd stood in the dark hallway, the house creaking around me, knowing each word was a weapon. Now, those words were my sword. Sarah pressed Mark on the stand, her questions like arrows. "Did you have permission to move Mrs. Castillo's money?" she asked. He stammered, his charm crumbling. "It was for the family," he said, but his eyes darted, searching for an escape that wasn't there. The jury's faces hardened, and I felt a surge of triumph, hot and fierce. Judge Thompson's voice cut through the tension, calm but final. "The evidence is clear," he said, his gavel poised. "Mr. Mark is ordered to repay the full amount and is barred from accessing any accounts tied to Mrs. Castillo's assets." The gavel fell, its echo a thunderclap in my chest. The room exhaled, and Sarah squeezed my hand, her smile quiet but proud. Mark slumped in his seat, his face gray, no longer the man who'd called me a tax write-off. Outside the courtroom, the air was crisp, the sunlight sharp against the stone steps. I breathed deeply, the weight of months lifting, replaced by a lightness I hadn't felt in years. But Emily's voice stopped me. "Mom," she said, her eyes brimming with tears, "I'm sorry I didn't see it." Her words were soft, raw, and they pierced me. I wanted to hold her, to erase the pain, but my heart was torn, relief mixed with the ache of her silence all those months. Can we rebuild after this? I wondered, my mind heavy with the question. She reached for my hand, and I let her, the warmth of her touch a fragile bridge. Inside, I wrestled with forgiveness, knowing it would take time. For now, justice was mine, and that was enough. I stood on the courthouse steps, the city buzzing around me, and felt the ground steady beneath my feet. Mark was exposed, my money secured, but this fight had changed me. I wasn't just Helen, the mother, the widow. I was a force, unyielding. What would this victory mean for me, for Emily, for the future? The answer was close, but not yet clear. Justice is mine, but what's next for me? Stay tuned. What do you find when the storm of betrayal clears and you're left standing in its wake? That's what I was searching for as I sat on the porch of our California home, the late afternoon sun filtering through the trees, casting dappled light across the wooden boards. The courtroom victory over Mark was still fresh, the echo of the gavel a quiet triumph in my memory, but it hadn't erased the ache in my heart. Emily sat beside me, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea, her eyes hesitant but seeking. Mark's lies had torn us apart, and though justice was mine, I needed to know, could we rebuild what we'd lost? More than that, who was I now after fighting a battle I never expected? The answer was stirring inside me like the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. The porch smelled of jasmine and warm cedar, a gentle contrast to the sterile courtroom air. Emily's voice broke the silence, soft and trembling. "I should have listened to you, Mom," she said, her words heavy with regret. "I let him blind me." I looked at her, my daughter, 35, but seeming so young in that moment, her face etched with the same vulnerability I'd seen when she was a child. I remembered those early years, raising her alone after her father's death. Nights when I'd tucked her in, her small hand clutching mine, promising I'd always keep her safe. Those memories flooded back, vivid and sharp, the creak of her childhood bed, the glow of her nightlight. I'd fought for her then and I'd fought for her now, but the cost had been high. I reached for her hand, her skin warm against mine, and squeezed gently. "We both trusted him," I said, my voice steady but soft. "But we're here now." Her eyes met mine, tears spilling over, and for the first time in months, I felt the weight between us lighten. It wasn't forgiveness yet, not fully, but it was a start, a fragile thread we could weave into something stronger. Inside, I wrestled with my own doubts. Had I pushed her too far, confronting Mark so fiercely? The question lingered, but her touch grounded me, a reminder that love could mend what betrayal had broken. Sarah's voice echoed in my mind, her words from earlier that day ringing clear. We'd met at a cafe, the air rich with the scent of roasted coffee, and she'd leaned forward, her eyes bright. "You didn't just win in court, Helen," she'd said. "You showed the world who you are." Her encouragement sank deep, stirring a truth I was only beginning to grasp. I wasn't just the mother who'd sacrificed, or the widow who'd survived. I was resilient, a woman who'd faced down a manipulator and walked away stronger. That realization warmed me, like the sunlight spilling across the porch, soft and golden. Later, I sat at my desk, the attic's familiar cedar scent wrapping around me. I opened my investment portfolio, the screen glowing with numbers that told a story of my independence, over $300,000, untouched by Mark's greed. My fingers traced the keyboard, each click a quiet affirmation. I planned for the future, a secure home, maybe a trip to see the world I'd put on hold for so long. The thought sparked a memory of my younger self, bold and unafraid, building that nest egg in my old office, the hum of the air conditioner a steady companion. I'd been strong then, and I was stronger now, unapologetic in my power. Emily joined me later, her presence a quiet comfort. We talked, not just about Mark, but about us, her dreams, my hopes, the years ahead. The conversation flowed, halting at times, but real. I felt a shift, a reclaiming of the bond we'd nearly lost. Inside, I knew this was my true victory. Not just the courtroom, but this moment, this strength. I was Helen Castillo, and I'd live on my terms, no longer defined by anyone's dismissal. But what lesson would carry me forward, shaping the rest of my days? The answer was close, waiting to be spoken. What's the final lesson I learned? Don't miss it. What do you carry with you when the fight is over and the dust settles on the life you've reclaimed? That's what I was pondering as I stood in the garden behind our California home, the morning air fresh with the scent of blooming roses and damp earth. The courtroom was behind me, Mark's betrayal a fading scar, and Emily's tentative smile a new beginning. I'd won justice, rebuilt my bond with my daughter, but something deeper had taken root, a truth about who I was and what I'd learned. At 70, I'd faced a man who called me a burden and proved him wrong, not just in court, but in the quiet strength of my own heart. The roses swayed in the breeze, their petals vibrant, and I wondered, what lesson would define the rest of my days? The garden was my sanctuary, its colors a stark contrast to the gray of the courtroom. I knelt, my fingers brushing the soft petals, their velvet texture grounding me. Emily joined me, her laughter light as she handed me a trowel. "You're unstoppable, Mom," she said, her voice warm with pride. I smiled, my heart full. We talked about the future, her plans to start fresh, my dreams of traveling, maybe even writing about my life. Sarah was there too, her silver hair catching the sunlight as she sipped coffee on the patio. "You've taught us all something, Helen," she said, her eyes crinkling. "Age is just a number." Their words wrapped around me, like the garden's warmth, affirming a truth I'd fought to claim. I thought back to that morning in the kitchen, Mark's cruel words cutting deep. "You're just a tax write-off." The memory was sharp, the coffee's bitter aroma and the cold tiles vivid in my mind. I'd been shocked then, hurt, but it had sparked a fire. That moment had pushed me to dig deeper, to uncover his theft, to stand tall in court. Each step, every statement, every recording was a reclaiming of my worth. Now, kneeling in the garden, I saw it clearly. They thought I was too old to fight, but they forgot I'd spent a lifetime teaching them how to live. That was my lesson, my legacy. Inside, I sat at my desk, the attic's cedar scent a familiar comfort. My thoughts poured out, a quiet monologue to myself. "I am Helen Castillo," I told myself, "a woman who built a career, raised a daughter, and faced betrayal with courage. I wasn't defined by Mark's words or anyone's doubts. My strength was my own, forged in sacrifice and sharpened by struggle." I opened my laptop, the screen glowing with my investment portfolio, over $300,000, a testament to my foresight. But more than money, it was my independence, my refusal to be diminished. I planned to give back, too, to others like me. At a local center, I donated to a program for elders, the staff's grateful smiles warming me as I handed over the check, the paper crisp in my hands. The garden stretched before me now, vibrant and alive, like the future I saw for myself. Emily's hand found mine, her touch a promise of the bond we'd rebuilt. I'd fought for her, for me, for the truth that age doesn't steal your power. My strength bloomed like the roses, unyielding and free. That was the lesson I'd carry forever. Never let anyone tell you your worth, no matter how many years you've lived. I looked at Emily, at the garden, at the life I'd reclaimed, and knew I was ready for whatever came next.